All right, let's dive into a paradox that honestly affects millions of us who are trying to do the right thing by exercising. It's called the active couch potato phenomenon, and it reveals a pretty surprising truth. Your daily workout, it might not be enough to cancel out the damage of sitting all day. Let's get into the science. So, you do your part. You hit the gym, you go for a run, you absolutely crush those physical activity guidelines. You should be totally in the clear from all the dangers of a desk job, shouldn't you? Well, it turns out the research is telling us a much more complicated and, frankly, a much more concerning story. And that leads us to this fascinating idea that researchers have actually named the active couch potato. Yeah, it sounds like a total contradiction, but it perfectly describes a huge number of people, and hey, maybe even you, who are super diligent about their exercise but then spend the vast majority of the rest of their day sitting down. Okay, here's the absolute key takeaway. You can be a fitness fanatic and a world-class sitter at the exact same time. The science is crystal clear that hitting your exercise goals does not give you a free pass. The health risks that come from being sedentary for the other, 15 or 16 hours you're awake, those are completely independent of your workout. Now, to really wrap our heads around this paradox, we have to make a super important distinction. Because it turns out that sitting too much and not exercising enough are actually two totally different problems for your body. So you can see the breakdown right here. Physical inactivity, that's pretty simple. It's about failing to get enough exercise. But sedentary behavior, that's totally different. That's about any time you're awake, but your energy output is super low. The two are not mutually exclusive at all. You can be physically active, yet still be highly sedentary. This table just brilliantly illustrates the difference using something called metabolic equivalence, or METs. You can think of one MET as the energy you burn just sitting still. It's your body in idle mode. As you can see, sedentary behavior is anything under 1.5 METs, like working at your desk or watching TV. But here's the cool part. Just standing up to cook or walking slowly to the store bumps you into the light activity category. And as we're about to see, that makes a world of difference. So what is the big deal? Why does all this sitting matter so much, especially if you're already an active person? Let's dig into the hard data and see what the physiological cost of all this sitting really is. Check out this number, 7.5 hours. That is the average number of hours that adults in the United States spend sitting every single day. And when you think about it, an 8-hour workday, your commute, chilling on the couch in the evening, that number starts to make a lot of sense. But from a physiological perspective, it is alarmingly high. And this right here is the absolute heart of the paradox. Research consistently shows that the negative impact of all that sitting on things like your blood pressure and your glucose metabolism, it's not just found in inactive people. It's also found in those of us who are getting our 150 plus minutes of exercise every week. Here is a super stark example from some massive studies. For every 2 extra hours a day you spend watching TV, a classic sedentary behavior, there's a 23% increase in the risk for obesity and a 14% jump in the risk for type 2 diabetes. This shows a really clear dose-response relationship. The more you sit, the higher the risk. And it's definitely not just about weight. At a physiological level, just sitting for a long time kicks off this whole cascade of negative metabolic changes. Why? Well, because your large leg muscles, which are basically the biggest glucose sponges in your body, they're completely inactive. They don't take up sugar from your blood effectively. And that contributes to a larger waistline, higher blood sugar, worse cholesterol, and even damage to the lining of your blood vessels. Okay, I know, that's a lot of bad news. But the really good news is that the solution is surprisingly simple, it's accessible to everyone, and it is incredibly powerful. It's all about a strategy called Break It Up. Okay, get ready for this because this is the absolute bombshell finding from the research. One study found that simply breaking up long periods of sitting with a little bit of light walking or standing was more effective at improving key metabolic markers than adding a single intense hour-long workout to a day that was otherwise sedentary. Just wow. So just let that sink in for a second. When it comes to fighting the harms of sitting, the magic isn't in how hard you move. It's about how often you move. The real key is just interrupting the sitting. That's it. And this right here is the whole protocol. First, don't let yourself sit for more than an hour straight. Set a timer if you have to. Second, focus on taking more breaks, even if they're just for a minute or two. And third, these breaks don't have to be intense at all. Just standing up, a simple stretch, a slow walk around the room, that's enough to make a real difference. All right, this all sounds great in theory, but how do we actually put it into practice in our crazy busy lives? Let's break this down into a really simple, actionable plan you can literally start using today. These are incredibly easy ways to weave this science into your life. That timer, it's a fantastic evidence-based prompt to just reactivate those big muscles we were talking about. Taking your calls while pacing around is a classic way to turn dead time into active time. The goal is just to constantly be on the lookout for opportunities to shift from a sitting state to a light activity state. So as we wrap up, the big takeaway isn't to stop exercising. Absolutely not. Keep doing that. It's vital. The real shift is to stop thinking of your workout as a get-out-of-jail-free card for the rest of the day. The real question for all of us is how can we weave more frequent, light movement into the other 97% of our day? So think about it. What's one sedentary habit you can break up starting today?